Hello children. Uh, Today we are going to understand the meaning of active transport and passive transport. In the last video we have seen and understood the concept of osmosis, imbibition and the terms related to it. So today we are going to understand about the difference in active and passive transport. So passive transport is similar to diffusion. Just understand this. Because in case of diffusion we have seen that the in case of diffusion we have understood that diffusion is possible with solid, liquid and gas. Okay, and from it moves, if you are talking about a liquid, it will move from higher concentration to lower concentration area, and when it is moving, there is no need of any semi-permeable membrane. That means a living cell is or living membrane is not required. Third thing, the ATP molecules are not spent when the movement takes place or the flow takes place. So it is just similar to diffusion. So that's what it is written over here. Passive refers to requiring no input of energy. That means ATP molecules are not used, energy is not used. There is free movement of molecule from higher concentration to lower concentration, because I had given you last time also the example for diffusion, that if you're burning incense stick in one room, so the aroma of that incense stick immediately gets spread to the other room as well. Why? Because the molecules, because when you are burning the incense stick, the chemicals which are there, they get converted into gaseous state. And gas is nothing but a fluid. So it moves from higher concentration area, that is the room where you have burnt it, from there to the other rooms where the concentration is low on its own without any spending energy. So, and there is no membrane as such in this case. So diffusion is nothing but passive transport. But when you're talking about active transport is something where we are talking specifically about ions. Okay, so when we are talking about ions, it is nothing but solid. Especially we are talking about solids. So ions are moving from the lower concentration to the higher concentration. Now, when we are saying lower concentration here, ions are not in free, means when you're talking about ions, it is not only ions, it is mixed in water. So it's in a form of solution. So when we are talking about solution, here we are saying lower concentration of water to the, when see here when we are saying lower concentration, we are talking about with respect to the lower concentration of water. So here the solutes are more. So if I'll draw the diagram over here. So for example, when you're talking about, there's a beaker. Okay, and in this beaker I'm drawing a membrane, because you can see over here a cell membrane, a living cell membrane we are talking about. So I'm just giving you an example that this is a cell membrane. So here the concentration of salts is more. Okay, the ions is more. So I'm just drawing over here 5 molecules, and here I'm just drawing 2. So now what will happen, here you can see that the concentration of solute is high. Okay, so it is in a solution form. This is solution. So you can see this is concentration solution, because the salt is more over here. This is both in solution form. So both is in the form of solution. But I can say that this is concentrated and this is dilute. Okay, so now here the concentration of salt is high and here the concentration of salt is low. But with respect to water, what can you say? With respect to water, the concentration of water is low. Water concentration is low because it is concentrated, means it is concentrated with respect to ions, but the concentration of water is low, and concentration of water, that is H2O, is high over here because the salt or the ions are less. So now what is happening is the salts are moving now in case of active transport from the higher concentration of salt to the lower concentration of salt. But with respect to water, when you're saying, it is moving from lower concentration to higher concentration. So you can see it is just opposite of passive transport. Because in case of passive transport, what is happening? The water molecules are moving from higher concentration area to lower concentration. So if I'm talking with respect to water, it will move from higher to lower. But when I'm talking about with respect to ions, it is moving from lower, that is the concentration of water is low, to the concentration of water is high, to the area where the concentration of water is high. So it is moving opposite, in the opposite direction to the passive transport. But when the ions are moving, the energy has to be spent. ATP molecules have to be spent. So now let us see. I hope till here the meaning is clear. We go to the next slide where we are going to understand that how it takes place. Okay, now here you can see that uh, the ions are moving. You can see it is written active transport, and you can see sodium from here. It's shown that from here it is moving over here. So arrow is pointing that sodium from here, it has come to this part, and so it is coming inside the cell. We have not shown the cell, it's only the cell membrane. Here potassium from inside is moving outside. Now how these ions, when they are moving, the energy is spent. So you can see over here ADP is formed from ATP. So when ATP is getting converted to ADP and it is breaking its 1-phosphate molecule, that means while breaking its 1-phosphate molecule, it is spending energy. So when sodium and potassium, they are moving across, the energy is spent. Now why it is so? So you can see the cell membrane, as you have learnt in standard 9, that it is phospholipid layer. So two lipid layers are there. So this here you can see that this membrane, which is shown over here, uppermost layer at the top, this is a lipid layer. So this is lipid layer. Again over here, this membrane is also lipid layer. So there's two lipid layers are there. You can see it's looking like a sandwich where two layers, upper and lower layer, is a lipid layer. So even this is a lipid layer. And this is phosphate. So in between, phosphate molecule is there. Now this particular, the in between, you can see over here there is a gap. So this particular uh, gap which is there, from here the ions are moving. So this gap is looking like this, but it is, like a lock and key arrangement. So I'll draw it like this. There's a gap from where the ions are moving in the across the cell membrane. It's nothing but like this. So suppose now sodium is over here. Okay, so it has to move across the cell membrane. So it gets attached over here. So in next case, you will see that when you're drawing it like this, so when you draw it, Actually, just a minute, I'll draw it properly. So here you can see, so the sodium now gets attached over here. Now once it gets attached over here, this gate opens. From here, the sodium has entered here. This particular gate opens. Means now how this membrane will look, it will look like this. Okay. So, okay, so this gate will open and this sodium which was here will be thrown over here. Okay, it will come, the sodium will reach here. So how, when you must have observed that when you vomit sometimes, so you're throwing the substances outside your body. So when you vomit, that time you require energy to throw the substances out, the solid particles which are inside your stomach. When you're throwing it, you might be feeling that you get exhausted after you do that. Now why you feel that you are exhausted, the reason is you're spending energy. Similarly here, now in this case we'll assume that this is a cell membrane and this is the cytoplasm. Okay, so this is the place inside the cell. This is the cytoplasm. And this particular region is outside the cell. Okay, this region is outside the cell. So now sodium is over here, means it is outside the cell. It has to go inside, means in the cytoplasm. So when it is moving inside, that time it gets attached over here like this to the outer part of this opening. So now when it is getting attached, it's like a gate, as I told you. It opens and it throws. And when it is throwing this sodium inside the cell, the energy is used. So here you can see the ATP. Now ATP, when you see ATP, it's like this. A, adenosine, and this P is attached over here like this. So it's like a chain. And this particular chain is broken and this phosphate is removed. So energy is given out and it forms ADP. So you know that this is going inside the cell. So when it is going inside, it is known as endocytosis. This particular word is not there in your textbook, but you have to understand this is known as endocytosis. So when the minerals which are there in the soil, these minerals, when they are moving from the soil inside the root hair, okay, because root hair is nothing but a single cell. So when they are moving inside the root hair, it is known as endocytosis and it is taking place through active transport because the energy has to be spent when the minerals are moving from the soil inside the root hair. Because whenever it is ions or salts moving across the cell membrane, as it is solid, it cannot move on its own because cell membrane is semi-permeable. It will not allow salt to just move directly. It will get attached and then it will be pushed. So when it is pushing, it has to spend energy. So it is active transport. So when it is moving inside, it is known as endocytosis. And similarly, you can see potassium from inside. Now it is pushed outside. So similarly, when potassium is over here, it gets attached over here when it is moving from inside the cell to outside. So now when it is getting attached, this is like a gate, as I told you. In case of potassium, what will happen is in case of potassium, you will see that the gate will open like this. Okay, and sodium, which was attached, potassium, sorry, which was attached over here, will be pushed outside. Now, as it is pushed outside the cell, it will be known as exocytosis. Okay, so potassium from here, when it is coming over here outside the cell, so this particular movement will be known as exo, because it is coming out. So exocytosis. Okay, children. So just remember that exo and endo both are termed with one terminology, that is active transport for you. Okay, I hope till here it's clear. Now we move to the next part. See, here in this chapter you have to understand different terms which are used. So the when you're talking about movement of water through roots and then it reaches xylem, it is because of all these factors which are working together. So osmosis is there, active transport is taking place, then imbibition is taking place. So with respect to that, these terms you have to understand how the movement takes place. Now I have written on this slide osmotic pressure, Turgor pressure and wall pressure. Now these are three different terms which you have to understand with respect to the cell. So what is osmotic pressure? Now you can see osmotic pressure is the minimum pressure. This is the definition which you have to learn. Osmotic pressure is the minimum pressure that must be exerted to prevent the passage of pure solvent into the solution when two are separated by semi-permeable membrane. So now what happens in case of the osmosis? Let's see from with the help of cell diagram. So you can see this over here. This is a plant cell where you can see cell wall is there. Plasma membrane, that is cell membrane, is shown. This is the vacuole which is filled with sap, and the cytoplasm is at the periphery along with the nucleus. Nucleus is not shown over here, but you can, you have to understand that without nucleus the cell is not having any identity. So nucleus is present. Here it is not shown in this diagram. Now you can see here it is written osmotic pressure, which is showing inward. Okay, and water moves into the cell due to osmotic concentration of the cell content. Now, you know that we have learned in the last video that whenever the cell is placed in hypotonic solution, what will happen is endoosmosis takes place. That means hypotonic means the concentration of water is more outside. So here the water concentration here is more. Okay, so more H2O. So when we are saying more H2O, means it is pure, we will say that it is hypotonic, okay, with respect to hypotonic solution. So when we are saying that the outside solution has more concentration of water, means it is hypotonic. So when it is hypotonic, water from outside will move inside the cell. Now when it moves inside the cell, what will happen is the cell will become turgid. Okay. Now you can see over here Turgor pressure. The word Turgor pressure is used. So when we are using the word Turgor pressure, means what will happen? The water is filled inside because it is hypotonic. The endoosmosis takes place and these are all water molecules. I'll just show you the water molecules over here. This is filled with water molecules now. And when it is filled with water molecules, the cell will become turgid. That means it will swell. And when it is swell, when you touch it, you will feel that it has become tight. Okay. Now why it has become tight? Because the water molecules which are here, they will exert pressure in all the direction. Because fluid property you have learned in physics, it will exert equal pressure in all the directions. So now it will exert pressure. Now suppose if the water will continue inside, okay, though uh, the till the concentration both outside and inside becomes same, it will continue, the water will continue coming inside. What will happen? The cell will burst. So to prevent that, whenever the pressure inside increases, which is known as osmotic pressure because of the endoosmosis, when this pressure which the water is exerting in all the direction, when it increases, okay, to the little higher level, so that is known as osmotic pressure. So that osmotic, due to that osmotic pressure, now the water will be prevented from moving inside. So water will be blocked. So when the turgor pressure is exerted, as the turgor pressure is exerted, the osmotic pressure now increases. So this is a minimum osmotic pressure which is decided depending upon the quality of the cell membrane. Okay, how far it can resist that pressure. So depending on that, the osmotic pressure is decided by the cell on its, depending upon the type of the cell membrane. So it won't be same for all, but it will differ with some little difference in that. So when the minimum osmotic pressure is there, that time the water from outside now will be blocked. So now the water will not be allowed to move inside. Okay, so it will be blocked. So osmotic pressure means whenever the endoosmosis takes place and water goes inside the cell, as you know that the cell becomes turgid, becomes tight, it swells. So there is a pressure which the water is exerting on its wall. So when that particular pressure is there and it understands that if more water flows in, the cell may burst. Okay, because the cell membrane has some rigidity, till that only it can tolerate. You know that rubber band, suppose if you are going on stretching, it has some limitation. If you go on stretching it, there will be a point at which it will break. Okay, so you have to understand similarly with the cell, if the water continuously move inside till the concentration outside and inside becomes same, there is a minimum capacity or ability of the cell membrane to withstand that pressure. Because when the water is moving inside, that time the pressure inside created by the water is increasing. Okay, this is known as turgor pressure. So it is increasing, and that the minimum pressure what it can tolerate, till then the water is allowed, which is known as osmotic pressure. And after that, the cell blocks the movement of water inside, because after that its capacity, it has no more capacity to withstand that pressure, otherwise it will burst. Okay children, so that is the meaning of osmotic pressure. So that is what is written over here. So osmotic pressure is the minimum pressure that must be exerted to prevent the passage of pure solvent into the solution, where two are separated by the semi-permeable membrane. So once that pressure has reached, now no more water pressure, the pressure of water which is created inside the cell, no more pressure can the cell membrane can withstand. So it stops or it blocks the flow, inward flow of the water. So that is the meaning of osmotic pressure. Now what is turgor pressure? You have seen that the pressure of the cell contents on the cell wall is called turgor pressure. So here in the diagram you can see that the cell contents, because it is not only water now, water from outside has moved inside, but there are other cell contents, cell sap, which was already present. Vacuolar uh, sap is there. That means in vacuoles already the sap is present, and then it is, you know, added due to the volume of water. So now what has happened is the cell content is whatever the previous cell content was there. Now there is addition of cell content. So when more cell content is there, the turgor pressure is the pressure which the cell content exerts on the wall. Okay. So now according to Newton's third law, you have understood that equal and opposite uh, reaction. So now this is the action that the cell contents are exerting pressure on the cell wall. So in return, the wall also exerts pressure on the cell content. So here you can see that is known as wall pressure. It's written as wall pressure. So this wall also exerts pressure on the cell content, and that is known as wall pressure. So here you can see, because it is expanding, no, due to the turgor pressure, so even that exerts pressure on the cell content, so that is known as wall pressure. So all this, these different terms, why it is explained, because when the water or the minerals are moving from the soil inside the root, means through the root hair, it is reaching the xylem, and then through the xylem it reaches the leaf. All these forces are acting for minerals and water to move in that particular direction. So all these concepts, these factors are playing their role. So you should know about these concepts. So that's why in this particular chapter, the terminologies are important, that you understand the meaning of it. So osmotic pressure, I hope it's clear. Now turgor pressure is the pressure of the cell contents on the cell wall. Wall pressure is the pressure exerted by the cell wall on the cell content. So till here it's clear. Now we go to the next part, bleeding. So there is one more term which is known as bleeding. So what is bleeding? Now you get a cut in your finger, blood comes out. We say I'm bleeding. Okay. Similarly, you will see that it's not seen every time. I won't say that if you cut a stem of any plant and they will bleed. It's not happening every time. But in some cases, mostly if you cut a grape vine stem, so you will see that there is a loss of water, that is basically a cell sap which is lost. Even from rubber tree, if you cut, you will see that the cell sap is coming out from the cut stem. So that loss of water, and it is thicker. It's not, the fluidity, or you can see the viscosity is little bit more than water. So that's the reason, because there are other cell contents which is mixed with water. So it's a cell sap which comes through a cut stem, and that loss of water or cell sap through a cut stem is known as bleeding. Okay, children. So here you can see that this is a cut stem and a drop, and it's thicker. It's more viscous than the water. So this particular loss of water through the cut stem is known as bleeding. Okay. Now we go to the next. Again, these are different terms as I have told you. So root pressure. Now what is root pressure? You know that we say blood pressure. Okay, we are using blood pressure most of the time. So what is blood pressure? The pressure with which the blood flows or gets circulated in our body. And when we use that BP machine, okay, it's nothing but a manometer. So manometer, why? Because it is having mercury, and when you press it, that time the level of mercury helps you to understand that what is the pressure of blood in your body. Similarly, when the cell sap is moving in the plant, for that movement it requires some pressure, because in case of our body also, blood is circulating against gravity. Similarly, when you're talking about the movement of cell sap in the plants, in the xylem, that is against the gravity. So it also requires certain pressure. So that pressure which is developed in the root, that pressure is known as root pressure. So the pressure developed in the roots due to the inflow of water brought about due to alternate turgidity. And see, when the blood is flowing in our body, we have a pump, heart, which is pumping the blood. But when it is pumping the arteries and the veins in which the blood flows, you will see that there is rhythmic contraction and relaxation. Okay, when you learn that chapter, but basically you have learned this in lower classes, that is, there is alternate contraction and relaxation. And because of that, there is a flow. Similarly, when these water and the minerals, when they are moving from the soil to inside the root, there is alternate turgidity and flaccidity. When you are talking about alternate turgidity and flaccidity, When the water moves inside, the cell becomes turgid, it becomes tight. And when this particular water which is inside one cell, when it is moving to the other cell, the first cell, I'll show you with the help of diagram over here. Now, for example, I'll just draw that this is a plant cell. I'm just drawing in a circular fashion. And this is another cell, which is just attached to it. Now, what has happened, this water which was outside, due to endoosmosis, it has moved inside, okay? So when it moves inside, this particular cell swells. I'm just showing this cell once again, that initially it was like that. Now this cell has become tight or turgid. Okay, this cell has become turgid. Now compared to that, this particular cell is having its original shape. Now you can see that because they are in close contact, compared to this, the water content is more over here. The concentration is high over here for water. So it is more, I'm just showing with the arrow. The concentration of water is more and low over here. I'm showing with downward arrow. So now water from this cell will move to this second cell. When it is moving to second cell, this particular cell will come to its original shape. Okay, so it will come to its original shape. I'm just drawing a bigger cell. So now this particular cell will become flaccid. Okay, so will become flaccid. Means it will just lose its turgidity and it will become flaccid. And the second cell, which is adjoining that, now will become turgid. The second cell will become turgid because the water from here has moved inside, and that will become turgid and it will swell. Okay. So alternate turgidity and flaccidity takes place when the water is moving in the root, because root is not made up of single cell, it is made up of multiple cells. So when the water is moving, it is moving from one cell to other cell. We'll see it in the diagram uh, so that you'll understand it clearly. So here you can see that this is a root hair which is in direct contact with the soil particles, and these are the different cells. So uh, in the ectodermis, cortex cell, and then the endodermis. So there are different cells which are there. So when the water is moving from the root hair towards the xylem, it has to pass through these different layers of the cells. Okay, so when it is moving from one layer of the cell to another layer, alternate turgidity and flaccidity takes place, as I had shown you. That the first cell will swell, and then the water from that cell will pass to the second cell. So the first cell will become flaccid, the second cell will become turgid, and then from the second cell it will move to the third cell, and according to that, alternate turgidity and flaccidity takes place. So movement of water from the root hair cells to the xylem vessel would create an upward force. So due to this alternate turgidity and flaccidity, there is pressure which is created inside the root, and that pressure is known as root pressure. Now this root pressure is more or high at different times of the day, because when you water the plant, when you put water into the soil, that time we are going to learn in detail about that. But see, now here in the figure I have shown that suppose if you take a root, if you attach manometer to the root, and if you see the level of mercury, it will show that there is some pressure because the level of mercury will be high. So it will show that there is some pressure inside the root, and that pressure is known as root pressure. Here also we are seeing that this root pressure, this is the xylem which is shown over here. So xylem and these outer layers which are there, that is phloem. So you can see that the first part, when you cut or when you open, the first conducting vessel is phloem and inside is xylem. Okay, so phloem first and then the xylem. Inside is xylem and outside is phloem. So when you are talking about phloem cells, they are outside and xylem is inside. So to reach to this xylem, the root pressure is important, because from this, once the water passes from the root hair to different cells, then only it will reach xylem. So as I have told you, it has to pass through epidermis, cortical cells, and then endodermis, and then comes the xylem. So you can see it is labeled over here: epidermal cell, cortical cells, and endodermis, and then xylem. So when it is passing through these different layers, that time there is a pressure, and to reach to the xylem vessel, sorry, this particular pressure is required. So that is known as root pressure. Now we go to the next part. What are the characteristics of root for absorbing water? So how or what should be the nature of the root so that it can absorb water from the soil? So one thing is, surface area of the root should be enormous. Enormous means if you remove the root from any plant and if you uproot it and if you just observe the root, you will see that this particular root is having millions of root hairs. You can see over here. Now these root hairs are enormous, are many. Now these root hairs are important for absorption of water, because water, when it is moving from the soil inside the root, it is first coming into the root hair. So the first part is surface area. So these root hairs are increasing the surface area of the root. The root hairs are important. So one thing is, surface area of roots is enormous. Second, root hair contains cell sap of which is hypertonic. Cell sap is hypertonic. Just cut this off. Just write over here is. Cell sap is hypertonic. So now why it should be hypertonic? Because see, now suppose if you talk about a single if you talk about a single this is a single root hair which is connected to the cell. So when you're taking a root hair, this is a single cell. Just understand that the root hair is coming out of this cell. The projection of this cell is the root hair. So it is a unicellular. And when you talk about unicellular, single cell, thus if you observe the cell membrane, it's very thin and permeable. Okay, it will allow the flow easily. So now, if you test the content of the sap which is present inside the vacuole of this particular root hair, you will see that it is salty. Now, if it is salty, it is known as hypertonic. What will happen if it is hypertonic? So just understand that I'll just write it over here, that the contents over here is salty. Okay, this content is salty. So now suppose if this is in contact with the soil particles and I pour water over here. So when I'm pouring, I'm going to pour pure water. Pure water means it's having less amount of salt, because you cannot get the taste of salt when you're watering the plant, you're watering it with pure water. It has minimum salt, but then it's very, very less compared to the cell sap which is present in the root hair. So this is hypertonic and this is hypotonic. Now when the root hair is in contact with the pure water, what do you think will happen to the flow of water? Yes, you're right. The water from outside will move inside the cell. Okay, because it will move from higher concentration area. This is the concentration of water is high over here. to the lower concentration of water. Because if it is salty, the water concentration is low and salts are more. So water will easily move inside. So endoosmosis will take place. That's the reason you will see that the one condition for the when you're talking about the characteristics of the root hair, it is that the root hair contains cell sap which is hypertonic. Then root hair have thin walls, as I have told you that it is thin and semi-permeable. So it allows most of the substances to get in. So salts and water can easily move. That's how it is designed. So these are the characteristics which you have to remember. Now we go to the next part over here. This is how the single root hair or the fully grown root hair will look like. Now this particular structure you should be able to draw. So you have to draw it properly. When you're drawing, see to it that you're drawing double membrane. The outer is the cell wall, inner is the cell membrane. You have to draw cytoplasm. You can see that the cytoplasm is at the periphery. The gap which is shown at the center is the vacuole. So here you can see that you have to draw a big gap. That's the vacuole, and the nucleus also at the periphery along with the cytoplasm. Now most important question which is asked is, suppose if this root hair is dipped in hypotonic solution or hypertonic solution. Now hypotonic solution, it will swell. Okay, but if it is dipped in hypertonic solution, how will the diagram look? So what do you think? Already you will say that it is hypertonic. But suppose if the salt content which is present in the cell sap, outside your, you are going to spray it with pesticides. So pesticides are nothing but chemicals. So with respect to this cell sap, those are hypertonic. So suppose if you are going to spray a chemical fertilizer or a pesticide, which is like a hypertonic solution created in the soil, what do you think will happen to the root hair? So in that case, you have to show that it will shrink, because you have learned that whenever the cell is dipped in hypertonic solution, it shrinks. Okay, so what will happen to the when it is shrinking? You have to show the diagram. You have to show the root hair in the same manner. So you're going to draw. I just draw it over here. So this is the root hair. Okay. So you are going to show the cell wall will remain in the same position. The cell membrane will shrink. So the nucleus, which you are going to show at the periphery. Okay. You will show that the nucleus is over here because it was, and the cytoplasm at the periphery. So this is how you'll be showing your diagram, that it has shrunk. So it has when you are placing it in hypertonic solution, it shrinks. So this will be your diagram. This is how it will look. Because chemical fertilizers, you know that when you are spraying, when you're adding chemical fertilizers to the soil, it has to be added in certain required amount. Okay, if you are going to add these chemical fertilizers more than the required amount, because some untrained farmers, they feel that if you add more chemical fertilizers, the yield will be good, but that makes soil saline. You have learned this in geography as well as in lower classes, that whenever you are adding more amount of chemical fertilizer to the soil, because there is some limitation which is there when you're adding chemical fertilizer, it has to be in required quantity. So if you're going to add beyond that required, or you're going to add it in more amount, the soil becomes saline. So when you are saying that addition of chemical fertilizers, large amount of chemical fertilizers makes soil saline, okay, or increases salinity of the soil. So here, when you're adding the soil to a larger extent, so it increases the salinity of the soil, and because of that, the solution which is outside will become hypertonic compared to the um, cell sap. So this will become now hypertonic. See, we have said that the cell sap of the root hair is hypertonic, but when you are adding large amount of chemical fertilizer, with respect to that, the salt outside, the salt in the soil becomes very, very high. So now, compared to the tonicity of the fluid which is inside, the tonicity of the soil is, it is more, it is having more amount of salts. So it is hypertonic with respect to the cell sap. So the root hair will shrink, and this is how your diagram will look. So this type of questions are asked. That's why you will be drawing this diagram which is shown on this slide. And again, you will be writing that when the soil becomes hypertonic, that time how will this root hair look? So you have to draw this diagram. Okay, children, with all the labeling, vacuole, nucleus, and everything. So nucleus has shifted over here. The cell wall will remain intact. Okay, now we go to the next part. So now you have to understand that the forces which are contributing to the ascent of sap. Ascent of sap means what? Now you have learned that when leaves are preparing food, they require water. From where is this water reaching the leaf? It is reaching, or the roots are absorbing that water, and this water is pushed up and it reaches the leaf. So when it is pushed up, it is known as ascent. Ascent means moving up in upward direction. So ascent of sap means the cell sap which is present in the vacuole, that is moved in upward direction. Okay. So when this sap is moved in upward direction, it is going against gravity. So it requires certain forces. So what are these forces which are contributing to that? So out of that, one is root pressure, which we have learned already what is the meaning of root pressure. Okay. Second is capillarity. Now what is capillarity? Now as you know that when you see xylem which is inside, so here you can see that I have shown xylem. Xylem is present inside and phloem is present outside. So phloem is responsible for passage of food, and xylem is responsible for the passage of water. So this is a vessel through which the water moves in the upward direction. So you can see this is a hollow tube-like structure. So it doesn't have only one tube. It has many small tubes. So you can see over here, I have shown that there is a vessel where mercury is placed. And these are different tubes. And these different tubes have different diameter. So you can see the diameter of this tube is comparatively lesser to these other tubes. So what has happened to the level of mercury inside the this thin tube? The level of mercury is higher. Why the level of mercury is higher? Because its diameter is less. And as its diameter, or you can say that the circumference is less. That's why the uh, rise of mercury in this particular tube is comparatively higher. So when you have thin tubes which is there in the xylem, these thin tubes are helping the water to rise up easily when there is vacuum created due to loss of water in the transpiration, because transpiration is taking place through the leaves. And when the because transpiration, we have already done this chapter, transpiration means loss of water from the aerial parts of the plant. So aerial parts means leaves. So when the loss of water is taking place, there is partial vacuum which is created over here. So suppose if I'm drawing the diagram, so this is okay. So you can see that this leaf has is connected to the petiole, and this petiole is connected to the stem. Okay. So this stem has xylem from where the water is going to reach this part. So this xylem has thin this has thin tubes. So it has thin tubes inside it. So now when the transpiration is taking place, there is loss of water, H2O, from the stomata of the leaves. So when there is loss of water, this tube is filled with water. So if the loss of water is taking place, there will be partial vacuum which will be created, a gap will be created here. And when there is a gap, the water is pushed up due to this capillarity effect. So due to narrow diameter of xylem vessels, so vessels of the xylem vessels which are there, they are designed in such a way that they have a very, they are very thin. The diameter, they have a very narrow diameter, so that whenever there is a gap due to transpiration, the partial vacuum which is created, that partial vacuum is getting filled up and the water is pushed in the upward direction due to this capillarity. So one is the root pressure, second is the capillarity. Now the third part which is there is cohesion and adhesion. Now what is the meaning of cohesion? So here you can see in this diagram, these are the drops, or you can say that it's shown that it's of same type. So whenever there is molecular attraction between the same type of particles, so if you consider this as water molecule, so this is one water molecule. So if I label this, this is one water molecule and this is another water molecule. So when there is attraction between these two water molecules as they are of the same type, that is known as cohesion. Co means same type. Okay, so cohesion is an attraction between same type of particles. So if you take certain, sometimes you will see that when you take rice particles, and if you are packing it in a gunny bag together, when you take it out, you will see that there is some kind of attraction between these rice particles. They are attracted or they are sticking to each other. So because they are all of same type, and when there is attraction between the same type of particles, that force is known as cohesion. And what is the meaning of adhesion? You can see that here I have shown This is water molecule. This particular particle is a water molecule. And if I assume that, if I tell you that let this be a glass particle. So you will see that whenever you're washing the glass tube or apparatus, and if you keep it aside, the water particles are stuck to that. Okay, so there is attraction between the water and the glass. So this type of attraction is known as adhesion. Okay, so when there is force of attraction or a molecular attraction between the same type of particles, it is known as cohesion. And when there is a force of attraction between two different types of substances, that is like water and glass, that is known as adhesion. So you can see that whenever water is moving, the ascent of sap is taking place. When it is moving in upward direction, that time these two forces are also playing an important role, cohesion and adhesion. So you can see that the water molecules, when they are pushed in upward direction, they are attracted to each other, and that's the reason it is like a single column of water when it is flowing inside the xylem. So because these molecules are attracting each other and pushing each other, again they are getting attached to the surface of the xylem, that is adhesion. Due to that also they are getting pushed in upward direction. So cohesion, adhesion, capillarity and root pressure, these are the four forces till now we have learned. Now the next one is transpirational pull. So as we have seen in last chapter that transpiration means loss of water from the aerial parts of the plants. So whenever there is loss of water, there is partial vacuum which is created, and whenever there is partial vacuum, the water is pushed in upward direction, because you must have noticed that when you are drinking juice or any drink with the help of straw, so you must have seen that when you suck, that time what you are doing is you're creating partial vacuum inside the straw, and the drink which is there in a glass, it is pushed in upward direction and it reaches your mouth. Okay, so the same concept or the same logic is used over here, that is the transpirational pull. When the water is getting lost from the leaf, the xylem vessel which is there in the stem, there partial vacuum is created, and because of that the water column is pushed in upward direction. Okay, so children, till here I hope it's clear. Now this is about the experiment to show that water is conducted upwards through xylem. So we have to prove that it is xylem vessel only which is helping in conduction of water, not phloem. So as we all know that xylem is inside, so this is xylem vessel, and outside is phloem. So what they have done is they have taken two twigs, you can see, or you can say a sapling, where the girdling is done in such a way. Girdling means you're shaving the stem. So you're shaving it in such a way that your only xylem is intact. The inner part, the inner vessel which is there, is intact. So when you're shaving it. And this is cut in such a way that xylem is removed. Because you can't shave it like this. You have to cut it. So the xylem is removed and phloem is kept intact. And you have to take a beaker, you have to place this twig inside the water and you have to leave it for a day or so. So after a day you will see that in the twig in which the xylem was kept intact, the leaves are turgid, they are they are in good condition, because the water is reaching the leaves and they are carrying out photosynthesis. But in this case, where the water is not reaching, because xylem is removed, so water cannot reach the leaves, and that's why leaves cannot prepare food. So what has happened is whatever food they were synthesizing, due to little bit chlorophyll, whatever they have, that food has accumulated over here. And now it is, because of that, the food will not reach after some time. It will pass and then it will not pass. So you can see that the leaves have, it's written it's wilt. Why it is wilt? Because it's not getting enough water, and that's why they droop down and then they will die because they are not going to carry out photosynthesis. So here you can see the xylem is intact, so the leaves are turgid. Here xylem is removed and phloem is kept intact. But photosynthesis cannot be carried out if water is not reaching the leaves. And after some time, whatever the food was prepared, that will reach for some time, and after that even that will stop. The plant will die. Now girdling a woody stem. So this is how, whenever they don't want any tree to grow in a society, you will see that sometimes that tree is disturbing certain, what happens is the branch of a tree is entering somebody's window, or there's a crack in their house, then they don't want that plant to be there in the society. So what they do is they girdle a woody stem. So if the girdling is done in this particular way, after a few days you will see that the tree will die on its own. The reason is when you girdle it, you are removing the one of the conducting tissue, and because of that the plant is not capable of making that food, whatever is prepared, reaching to the roots, and because of that the tree will be killed. You are going to use the word killed because you are doing this shaving thing. It's not natural. So after a few days, you will see that the tree will die on its own after this girdling is done. Okay. Now we have to understand that what are the uses of turgidity in plants. So you will see that whenever water is there in the plant, in the roots, and then it is there in the xylem, it reaches the leaves, and because of that the cells, wherever the water is entering, that cell becomes turgid. So what is the use of this turgidity? You can see that turgidity provides rigidity in the soft tissues. So you will see that leaves, when they are standing upright, flowers when they are standing upright, that is because of the turgor pressure which is there. So that is due to turgidity. So soft tissues, if water is not present, they will droop down. And because of the presence of water, because they are turgid, there is rigidity. Second thing, turgor, that is the turgor pressure. Because of that, the stomata can open and close. Okay. So when the stomata is opening, that is due to the presence of water inside the stomata. It will open when it is filled with water. So if I'm drawing stomata over here so that you will understand it. So this is how the stomata, we have done it in last chapter. These are the guard cells. Okay. And the guard cells has to be shown with double membrane because this is a plant cell. And the opening which is there is a stomata in between. Okay. So now here, this is the nucleus. You have to show it properly. And there is a pigment, that is chlorophyll. And when it is filled with water, if water enters into the stomata, it will become turgid. And when it becomes turgid, the turgor pressure will be applied on these walls of the guard cells. Okay, it will be in this direction. And due to that, I'll draw it with different color. Sorry. So because of the water content, there will be turgor pressure, and this turgor pressure will be on the walls, and because of that, this stomata will be open. But suppose if water is lost from here, if the water moves outside, so what will happen to this cell? Now it will become flaccid, and because it becomes flaccid, the stomata will close. So this particular opening which was there, now it will not be there. Okay, so it will close. Just bear with the diagram, children. It once again. So now what will happen is this particular structure, it will be closed. There will be some gap, but it will be like this now. It will be closed. Okay, so this particular part which was open now, it will be closed like this. Okay, so because the cell has become flaccid, the water is withdrawn from the stomata. So this turgor is very important for opening and closing of stomata. Okay, children. Now the next is turgor in root cells build up root pressure. So you have seen that whenever there is alternate turgidity and flaccidity, there is pressure which is created inside the root cells, and because of that ascent of sap takes place. Now turgor pressure helps to push through the hard ground. So now you must have seen that whenever sprouting or whenever germination takes place, the seed coat bursts and the radicle comes out of the seed coat. So, suppose if this is the seed and this has a seed coat. So when I'm going to draw a so if I'm going to draw a bean seed, okay, now a bean seed has a seed coat that is testa and tegmen. So it is thick. I'll just draw it thick. Okay, this is a seed coat. And here you can see is a hilum. Now when the sprouting takes place, you must have seen that the seed coat burst. So this seed coat is, when it is getting pushed from inside, the radicle is coming outside. So if this seed is inside the ground, so you can see that from the ground, this radicle is pushed outside. Okay, you can see that the radicle is pushing this ground surface and it's coming hard. So for this pushing the hard ground, there is some force which is required by the radicle, and that is provided by the turgor pressure. So I hope children till here it's clear about the use of turgidity in plants. Now we go to the next part. That is the turgor pressure. How is it playing a very important role in rapid drooping of leaves of the sensitive plant, that is Mimosa pudica. You can see that this is Mimosa pudica. So before, means it is, the leaves are open. But suppose if anybody touches it. So what happens is the leaves droop like this. This is touch me not. We call it touch me not. So when you touch it, the leaves droop. Now, why this drooping of leaves takes place? So, in this plant, the stimulus of touch leads to the turgor at the base of the leaflets. So, what happens is the water drops. When you will see that this is the base of the leaves. So, here in this base, there is a special cell here at its petiole. Okay, this particular part. where because it's a compound leaf and many leaf is attached to the one, you can see that leaflet. So in this particular case, at the base over here, there is a special cell which is known as pulvinus. They are located over here. So now whenever you touch this plant, when you're touching, the water droplets which are present over here, they all get moved to this part. They all move to this part. So water is moving towards this pulvinus. So when the water moves towards the pulvinus, they become flaccid at this part. So this becomes turgid and this becomes flaccid. And because of that, these leaflets, they close. Okay. So this is the reason which you have to learn, which is given on the slide whenever give reason is asked. Okay, children. So I hope till here it's clear. Now we move to the next part. So next part is bending movements of certain flowers towards the sun. You can see that it is said sunflower. It's moving towards the sun. And sometimes you can see that certain plants, they sleep at night. So when they're sleeping, they're drooping their leaves and flowers. So that movement, that drooping down is also because of the turgor movement. So I hope children till here everything is clear. Read the chapter. If you have any doubt, you can write it in the comment box. Okay, children. Thank you.